Welcome to the lesson on appositives, how to use commas to separate non-essential information. The term appositive might sound foreign to you, but I guarantee you use them daily. Today we're going to be discussing how to use an appositive, what an appositive looks like, and how to correctly place commas to separate appositives from the rest of your sentence. An appositive is a noun or noun phrase that renames another noun right beside it. The appositive could be a short or long combination of words. Let's take a simple sentence. Michael Jordan is one of the greatest athletes of all time. This sentence should make sense to you because you're in high school and you've heard the name Michael Jordan, you've seen his highlights on ESPN, and you know that Michael Jordan is one of the greatest athletes of all time. Pretend that you're explaining this to someone who wasn't alive when Michael Jordan was in the NBA. Like this baby, for example. This baby probably has no idea who Michael Jordan is. You might use an appositive to explain to this baby that Michael Jordan, a basketball player, is one of the greatest athletes of all time. If you see right here, I added this phrase, a basketball player. This is called an appositive. It gives more information about Michael Jordan. That's what an appositive does. It simply gives extra information about a noun to put more information into your sentence and make your writing more interesting for your reader. So let's look at the definition of an appositive again now that you've seen one in action. An appositive is a noun or noun phrase that renames another noun right beside it. The appositive can be a short or long combination of words. So we said, Michael Jordan, a basketball player, is one of the greatest athletes of all time. The phrase basketball player is just renaming Michael Jordan. It's giving more information about who he is. So an important point to remember is that a non-essential appositive is always separated from the rest of the sentence with commas. This term non-essential means you don't have to have it. It's extra information that gives more detail to your sentences. Let's look at another example. Tony Parker, who has played for the Spurs for his entire professional career, is from France. If you look at this sentence, the parts that are underlined in gray is the basic sentence right here. What's underlined in blue is the appositive, the extra information. You'll see that it's set apart by commas. If we took out the appositive, this sentence would still make sense. We see Tony Parker is from France. However, when we add the appositive, who has played for the Spurs for his entire professional career, gives a lot of extra information about Tony Parker that makes this, number one, a more interesting sentence, but number two, it gives more detail for your readers. Tony Parker is from France as compared to Tony Parker, who has played for the Spurs for his entire career, is from France. As you can see, we use the commas to set off the information that's just over the top. It's extra, more detail that's not necessary for the meaning of the sentence, but it does make your sentence more interesting. Sometimes appositives can be located at the beginning or the end of a sentence. It doesn't always have to come in the middle. The non-essential information still needs to be separated with one or more commas. I'd like to use bolt as an example for this. No, not that one. This one. Usain Bolt is the fastest man alive. Maybe you watched the Olympics this past summer and saw him win a couple gold medals. Here's an example of an appositive at the beginning of the sentence. A sprinter from Jamaica, Usain Bolt is the fastest man alive. Our base sentence is right here. Usain Bolt is the fastest man alive. This is extra information. A sprinter from Jamaica. It modifies Usain Bolt and gives more information about him. Here's an example of an appositive in the middle of the sentence. Usain Bolt, a sprinter from Jamaica, is the fastest man alive. It's the same root sentence. We're just adding extra information. And here's an appositive at the end of the sentence. The fastest man alive is Usain Bolt, a sprinter from Jamaica. As you can see, the sentences still make sense without an appositive. It just gives extra detail to your writing. So how do you know where to place a comma? Look at this example sentence. Lassie, a rough collie, saved many children from wells. The root sentence is Lassie saved many children from wells. But because Lassie is an older TV show, some people might not know who that is. So I added an appositive, a rough collie, to explain that Lassie is a dog, a former hero who saved many children from wells. You can see this arrow. It goes from rough collie to Lassie because rough collie is just giving extra information about Lassie. An appositive was usually going to come right before or right after the main noun that it modifies. Students, see if you can figure out where to place the commas in this sentence. There is an appositive, it just needs to be set off with commas. Go ahead and pause the presentation. Hopefully you place commas around the phrase an American author. That is the appositive that gives more information about Ernest Hemingway. It's non-essential information, but it would help a reader who is not sure who Ernest Hemingway is. Here's another example. Students, please pause the presentation and decide where the comma should go in separating this appositive from the main sentence. A real man's man, Hemingway loved to hunt and fish. Our comma for the appositive goes right after the word man. As you can see in this example, the appositive comes at the beginning of the sentence, giving more information about Hemingway. One thing that I find hugely helpful when trying to determine where a comma should go in separating appositives is just to read the sentence out loud or mouth the words to yourself. Look at this sentence, for example. A real man's man, Hemingway loved to hunt and fish. If you read the sentence to yourself, there's almost a natural pause right where the comma should go. If you're having trouble figuring out where to put commas, if you think there's an appositive, simply read the sentence to yourself and see if that gives away the answer. So if the sentence makes sense and is grammatically correct without the appositive, you will know that you have placed the commas correctly. So not only can you check it by reading it out loud, but if you take out the appositive after you have marked it off and the sentence still makes sense, then you know that you've put the commas in the right spots. Let's look at that sentence that we were just talking about. A real man's man, Hemingway loved to hunt and fish. So now let's take out the appositive that comes at the beginning of the sentence and look at what we have left. Hemingway loved to hunt and fish. Does that sentence still make sense? Yes, it just has a little bit less information about Hemingway, but it's still a complete sentence and still works. And here's a photo of Ernest Hemingway doing one of the things he loved most. Students, go ahead and pause the presentation and see if you can decide where the comma should go in this sentence about Maya Angelou. If you're having trouble, maybe read the sentence out loud and see if that helps you. And then you can also subtract the appositive and see if the sentence still makes sense without it. Here's where you should have put the comma. Right after Angelou, and another one again after St. Louis. Maya Angelou, born on April 4th, 1928 in St. Louis, was raised in St. Louis and Arkansas. So let's put it through the reverse test. If we take out the appositive, does the sentence still make sense? Maya Angelou was raised in St. Louis and Arkansas. Yes, the information about where she was born, in what city, and her birthday is extra information. It's good to know, but it's not essential for the main meaning of the sentence. So here's a few more literary examples of appositives. Students, pause the presentation and see if you can decide where the commas would go in this sentence. This is an excerpt from Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. There is nothing like employment, active, indispensable employment for relieving sorrow. These three words, active, indispensable employment, is the appositive that modifies this word, employment. It's just giving more information about what kind of employment she's talking about. Here's another example from Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Go ahead and pause the presentation while you decide where the comma should go in this excerpt. This is a longer appositive, so it might have been harder to decide where the comma should have gone. The conquest of the earth, which mostly means the taking it away from those who have a different complexion or slightly flatter noses than ourselves, is not a pretty thing when you look into it too much. So let's look at that quotation. If we take out the appositive, does it still make sense? The conquest of the earth is not a pretty thing when you look into it too much. That's the meat of what Joseph Conrad is trying to say. The extra information he gives about the conquest of the earth gives greater insight into what the point he's trying to get across. Here's one more example. Feel free to pause the presentation while you decide where the comma should go in this quotation. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. And that's from The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. In this case, the appositive is this phrase, of their own free choice. It's talking about the women who of their own free choice have remained 35 for years. Oscar Wilde is just making a play on words here, saying that these women try and act like they're still young women, even though they're actually getting older every year. Let's take out the appositive and see if this sentence still makes sense. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have remained 35 for years. An easy definition to remember for appositives is that all they do is give extra non-essential information about a noun in a sentence. If the sentence did not have an appositive, it would still make sense. However, sentences with appositives are more interesting for your reader, and they give more information about topics that might help your reader more clearly understand what you're trying to say.